We're live, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Okay, welcome everybody to our October meeting. Good to see you all. Welcome Kenneth and Luke from Aon, who join us today. Also, we have our new pension board chair, David Edwards from Gwynedd. Excuse me. I've known David a long while. He's been one of the founding fathers of WPP, and I welcome Holly's breadth of experience he has to contribute to our committee. Welcome, David. Thank you. Okay, then. Apologies. Any apologies, Rachel?
Apologies.
Oh, David was got your hand up, David.
Yes, Chair, I'd apologise. I have to leave about perhaps 11, quarter to 12 at the very latest for other council business.
Okay. And I think Trisha's done the same. She's got to leave about 11:30, I think, as well. She's messaged. Okay, thank you. So is any apologies, Rachel?
Jane Thomas, the Section 151 officer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then. Declarations of interest, item 2. I'll declare I'm a member of a pension fund, Parish Pension Fund.
Yeah, same here, Chair.
Same here, Chair.
You got all that, Rachel? Yeah. Hugh, Errol, just a few around. Who else? Yeah. Okay, then. Thank you very much.
I think I should declare I'm also a pensioner in the Gwynedd Pension Fund, no longer associated otherwise.
Okay, thanks, David. Thanks very much. Okay, item 3, excuse me, minutes. They've been circulated. Are you all happy to approve them?
Yeah, happy, Chair. Oh, I'm happy to second.
Thanks, Errol. Everybody happy? Great, thank you very much. Here, item 4, pension board minutes. Very interesting ones for your stay in Cameron House, David. So I don't you want to go through them. I know you want to say.
Yeah, if I can say a few words, please, Peter. First, just say I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be your Powys Pension Board Chair, and thanks to everyone I've met so far for the warm welcome. As you said, I'm a former officer from Gwynedd. I used to be the county treasurer and director of the pension fund. Now retired for about 15 months, and with a couple of pension roles and a sort of consultant basis. And it was great to meet officers and board members in Llandrindod on my first meeting on the 2nd of September. And with the exchanges I've had with Jane, with Chris, Rachel, and with Peter, I'm already feeling at home in Powys, one of you by now. I managed to put Powys on the map by using my new title, Powys Pension Board Chair, when I was speaking at a conference in Scotland a couple of weeks ago. And I've put up summary reports from that event on page 10 of the pack for this meeting. I'm not going to go through that in detail, but it's there for you, just for information for everybody. The Westminster Government's pensions review was the recurring theme of that investment forum in Loch Lomond, and you'll definitely hear more from Chris in the next item, or the first substantive item this morning, regarding that call for evidence that's in his admin and governance reports. I'll be representing Powys at the Wales Pension Partnerships engagement meeting with the other board chairs from Wales tomorrow morning, and the Wales Pension Board chairs are also seeing Becky Clough from the Scheme Advisory Board in the afternoon, where we'll discuss current LGPS issues. So, yeah, as Peter said, the board minutes are in the pack. There's 2 meetings there. The 9th of July minutes, that was Gerard Moore's last meeting in the chair. So I won't go through those because I wasn't present, but I'll just say Gerard did graciously agree to meet with me on the 6th of August, and he marked my card around Northwood Golf Course. We had a nice game of golf, and he marked my golf card literally, and he also passed on some of his vast board experience. So trying to get some continuity as we go forward there. I was briefed by Gerard. So with his briefing and my experience of LGPS and WPP, I think I've been able to hit the ground running as your board chair. The 2nd of September was my first meeting, as I said, and the board on that day pre-scrutinised several items which are on today's committee agenda. Those include the Risk Register Administration Pillar, the Pension Regulators General Code of Practice, the Wales Pension Partnership updates, data quality testing, the Data Improvement Plan, and the Communication Strategy Statements. That's most of your agenda today, really. Well, I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have now. Rather than going through all those issues with the committee chair's agreement, I'll just contribute as necessary when those items are discussed by yourselves later in the meeting. So just to move on, could I ask the members please to just note the board minutes from both 9th of July and 2nd of September. Yeah.
Thank you, David. Yep. Thank you. We'll just note that. I can't see any questions before we note it. No, well, you must have. Thank you for that report. Can we propose and second to note the report, please?
Yeah, happy.
Arwell. Yep. Anybody else? Hugh, anybody to second it? Yeah, Hugh, thank you. Everybody happy? Lovely. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, David, for that. Yeah, it's ongoing. There's a new one, item 5, chairman's announcements. I might see what's going on. July the 17th, I went met the WPP as a joint governance committee. September 11th to the 13th, I was in Birmingham with Chris to a local government chronicles conference. Very much on the agenda is the cost of net zero. Also, the big item is the cash deficit, addressing all that. But it was very interesting, and it helps to get my knowledge. Well, keeps my knowledge. But it was a very good conference. Sometimes you don't find you learn much, but this one was very good. On the Wednesday 18th, I was in Flint with Chris with the WPP Joint Governance Committee. We had a responsible investment workshop afterwards, but very much the call for evidence, as David was saying, is I haven't seen a government work so fast to look to pool in. They want to they're trying to look at amalgamating the pools. Wales, we're trying to keep. I think this will come further on in the agenda anyway. I'm very much in favour of keeping our own identity as we're a country, and we do have different regulations. But if we want to go well, what do I say? Share pooling, join for investments we might think would be beneficial to us. I think we could do that, but we'll wait and see. But it's moving very fast for government. It's quite staggering. So and then on the 24th to the 26th, I went. I was invited with Baillie Gifford. I met with them up in Scotland to their Renaissance conference, which was very interesting on different investments. AI was very interesting. It's the staggering space AI is developing, and in America especially, the race is to get the pot of gold to the top. It's like this, and it's quite. I know it's staggering and quite worrying how fast it is growing, AI. So, and also some other special, interesting investments. And I just thanked Baillie Gifford for inviting me up there. It was really good. Okay, then item 6, administration and government report. Chris.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, everybody. I'll share my screen if that's easy, just so we can all have a look at the same thing as I work through it. So hopefully that's all come through now. Can you see that in front of you? Hopefully, yeah. Okay. Considering the length of the agenda today, I'm not going to take committee through each bullet point. You might be pleased to hear, but I will pull out the bits that I feel are relevant and important for committee to know as we work through the document. So if I just have a quick look at the first point, 2.2 is just making committee aware that the Scheme Advisory Board have published the scheme annual report. So that's the report for all the LGPS as a whole. You have seen this previously. I did bring it up at the last meeting, but a link to the latest report is there for you to access should you wish to. Something which the chair didn't touch upon then, he has been busy recently and will be busy in the coming months as well. And there's lots going on when we come to the call for evidence and pooling consolidation, which we'll come on to a bit later on. But the chair of the Scheme Advisory Board, Councillor Roger Phillips, is calling an event with Pension Investment Committee chairs, with essentially the main discussion being related to pooling consolidation. So the chair is meeting online on the 14th of October with the chair of the Scheme Advisory Board and other chairs of committees from around Wales and England. So no doubt you'll be feeding back to us at some point, Chair, once you've had those conversations, what came out of them, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Yeah.
2.4, this is just an important one to make committee aware of, is that every time there's a pension fund valuation, and Section 13 of the Public Services Pensions Act 2013, there's a requirement for the Government Actuaries Department to produce a report to essentially benchmark the process, to make sure that the process is carried out according to what's expected. And what it does as part of the exercise is it identifies any potential anomalies within any valuation that's happened at a fund level. And it raises what it calls flags. So if something that they're not expecting happens, then a flag is raised, and it's up to that fund. Then I work with their actuary and answer why that may be. So the aim of the game really is to not be flagged, and that essentially proves that you carried out the valuation in accordance with the regulations and nothing unexpected has come out of your valuation report. And an easy example would be something along the lines of, as part of this review, GAD spot that you might have reduced an employer's contribution rate, but at the same time pushed out their recovery period. So you've done almost like doubled up the reduction applied to them. What you'd usually expect is, if you're reducing a contribution rate, you'd actually pull in a recovery period because the funding level of that employer is in a better position. So just to give committee the assurances that the Powys Fund had no flags as part of this exercise, and everything happened according to what was expected by the government. And interesting, I don't know if you had the chance to read the report, which is hyperlinked in 2.4, but they actually used our evaluation report as part of this exercise to test. So Powys is named within this government report on several occasions as part of the test that they carried out. So if anything, there was an even brighter spotlight shone upon the fund. So I'm pleased to say that there's no anomalies or flags discovered. 2.5 is just there for information. The Scheme Advisory Board is not recommending any changes to the scheme, which administrators I'm very pleased about. We've got enough going on with McLeod at this point in time, so it's just there for your information. 2.6 is just fleshing out what we've talked about already about the consolidation of funds and pools within the pensions arena, but primarily focusing on the LGPS because of the scale and the way it works. So essentially, the government has been pretty clear through press articles and whatnot that it's looking at pensions, and as part of that review, it's looking at the LGPS. I've heard several comments about the scrutiny being placed on the LGPS because it is so big. The fact that it's managed by 86 administering authorities across 8 pools, is that the best way for the LGPS to be run? Probably a fair question to ask, really. It doesn't hurt to review how things are done when you're new into a job, effectively, as this government are. But what has been surprising is the pace. I think the chair's alluded to this, is the pace at which things are moving. So you'll see some dates linked to some dates mentioned in this item about on the 4th of September, the government launched a call for evidence, which is essentially our opportunity as a pension fund to tell them our thoughts on how do we think pooling is going, what are our benefits, what do we like to do differently, is there anything we'd like to do differently, etc. But a really quick turnaround of 3 weeks from the 4th of September launch date to the closing date on the 25th of September. So within those 3 weeks, we, as a fund, did provide a response, and I've shared that with you previously, and we did submit it ahead of the deadline. But I'd just like to put on record my thanks to the Pension Board Chair for his help in looking at this response. Because we have to move quickly, I was very grateful to David for making the time available to help me work through the response. So a bit of a joint effort on this one, but very, very grateful for the support on that one. Since that submission went in on the 25th of September, I've also met with representatives from the government and the ministry in Cardiff with other members of the Wales Pension Partnership to speak face to face on this issue as well. again, to put across our perspectives from a Welsh perspective, our thoughts from a Welsh perspective, I should say, and that's both at fund level and also at pooling level. The discussions they're asking the right questions, and they're very interested in how the Welsh pool works. So hopefully we've done a good job in putting across our thoughts and how Wales is represented within the pooling arena as well. So they've taken that away. They are conducting an exercise of visiting all the pools, and I think we're about halfway down the list. So they have met some before us, and there are still some more pools to be visited afterwards. As I say, it is moving at pace, so we're expecting to hear more about this exercise in the coming months. I will keep you updated as and when I hear on this, but it's a very important item. It's going to be pretty resource intensive, I think, over the next few months as well, in terms of what they want from us and whatnot. So watch this space, and I'll keep you updated. Good governance, just saying, has been delayed because of change of government. 2.8, I think, is an interesting one, and again, I have shared this with committee ahead of the meeting, and this is the fact that the Scheme Advisory Board have produced a very helpful statement relating to fiduciary duties. And within that statement, it very clearly points out the expectations and responsibilities placed on you as committee members, and the kind of thought processes that you should be going through. And I know you do this anyway, because we often discuss about fiduciary duty. But I think it was useful to have this actually published in black and white and made available for us to refer back to, should we need to. It does point out the fact that the pension committees are different to normal local government committees, and in terms of the expectations placed upon it for scheme members and the political thoughts and natures behind it as well. So if you haven't had a chance to read it yet, please do refer to that statement there. It's really helpful, and it's useful for us to have that to be able to refer back to when the discussions come up as well. I know we do talk about fiduciary responsibilities quite a lot in our meetings. 3.1 is just pointing out that DLUC has now reverted back to the previous name, Ministry Housing, Local Governments and Communities, Communities Local Government. Just for information. 3.2 is just to make committee aware that there was some late legislation passed in respect of annual benefit statements, which we have to issue each year by the 31st of August. And what it did was it removed the requirement for funds to have to insert some figures around McLeod. So McLeod is an underpin, it's protection that's applied to scheme member benefits, and essentially we carry out a test of, had they remained in the old scheme or transferred across the new scheme, we'll pay the better of the two. The expectation was that we would include that information within our annual benefit statements this year. I think due to many reasons, it wasn't possible, not just for Powys, but for all the funds in the UK, really. It's been very, very challenging. So some legislation was passed just to change that, to say, yeah, we haven't had to do it this year, which we're grateful for. So we just complete the statement exercise as we have done in previous years. But it's just an example of how McLeod has complicated the admin arena quite considerably. I've heard about a scheme that issued some transfer calculations and had to essentially recall those transfer calculations because of the McLeod complications. So what we've seen is that some transfers have been issued and they've been arrived at the receiving schemes, who then calculated these transfers in. They've then had to recalculate them because they've been advised by the sending scheme that, oops, actually the McLeod part wasn't right. We need to redo them. So that's just an example of how complicated McLeod has made the LGPS and the public sector pension schemes as well. So you'll hear me talk about McLeod, and in fact, you've heard me talk about McLeod an awful lot over recent months as well. So it's still ongoing.
So we'll be in a position next year, Chris, to include the information they require, will we?
That's the intention, Arwell. Yeah, we are partially dependent on what the software can do. Actually, I think the intention is from this tweak to regulations that you don't have to do it this year, but you will be expected to do it next year. So the intention is that yes, we will do it next year. Yeah, as things stand. Okay,
thank you, Chris.
Okay. 4.1 is just to let you know that the pensions regulator will be increasing some communications around pensions dashboards, which leads into item 5, which is about pension dashboards. Brief reminder for committee that a pension dashboard is something new, never been done before, and the intention behind it is that it's a portal that a pension saver logs into, and the technology behind this portal goes off and interrogates all the pension providers for this individual. Once they've tapped in some identifying information like a national insurance number or something like that, the intention is that this system will go off and interrogate us, our system, pull back the information from our system and from all the other systems, so that the pension saver has all their pensions information in one place, rather than having to log into 3, 4, 5, 6, however many different pension pots they might have. Great idea in principle. But it's a bit of an unknown as to the impact on the team. what this means. We do know that the software providers will help us with in terms of exchanging data and whatnot, but the unknown is really around any potential queries that scheme members might have. If the data is not complete from one scheme, will they contact us because they know we're pretty good at replying? I don't know. So there's all these sorts of complications which we don't really know how that will go, because I say it's never been done before. But again, I'll keep you posted. But in this month, I expect it's about 12 months' time when I have this meeting next year. I'll be telling you that, look, we're due to go live, and we'll see what happens. So that's the intention. The more substantive item in this one is number 6, actually, the risk register. And the chair of the board did touch upon the fact that as pension board, they did review this at their meeting in September, with particular focus on the administration pillar. And from that meeting, they made some recommendations around these 3 risks: admin 2, 9, and 10. And they suggested some updated scoring and wording. Now, it's been pointed out to me this morning, actually, that the risk register that's enclosed in the pack actually is the previous version, I think. Now, apologies, committee, this is meant to be the up-to-date version, but as you'd be aware, I had issues with the risk register previously as well. So I obviously need to focus more on how I get the risk registers presented to yourselves. But the risks, there weren't a fundamental change. They're a tweak to the edges in terms of some wording and some scoring. So the version that you have in front of you as part of this pack is the previous version. So if committee are amenable to this suggestion, what I'd suggest is that they approve these recommendations based upon the board's comments, and that I share the amended version with committee afterwards, just to make sure they're comfortable with that, if that's okay. As I say, there's nothing groundbreaking in these amendments. They are minor tweaks to the edges. And I think what's reflected in that item is correct. If I can ask David, as chair of the board, that those amendments are the ones that board suggested.
Certainly, Chris, yeah, I would support what you propose to amend those, and just to put some meat on the bones, perhaps, for committee members. I think 2 risks there, admin 2 and admin 9, were quite similar, but one was loss of systems due to cyber threats, and the other one was loss of systems due to the contract situation, and the scores didn't seem proportional to each. The contract one now having been resolved, the score could be tweaked down to reflect less of a risk compared to potential cyber, which everybody, every organisation is, regardless of its pensions or whatever, a bit perturbed about the threat from cyber, with various councils like Hackney and national parks like Brecon Beacons having been invaded in recent years. So yeah, and then the wording, I think, is taking out the bit about cash flow, which was intended to be another part of the register. So yeah, I would recommend that you support what Chris is suggesting there.
Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you, David. So yeah, the registers are there for committees' information. I don't intend to go through them in too much detail. As I say, we do this at the board level, but as presented to you today for hopefully your approval of those 3 small amendments to the administration pillar. And the intention is at the next board meeting, we'll have a deeper dive into one of the other pillars, whether that be governance or investment as well, and carry out a similar exercise at the next committee meeting. So I'll just pause there, if that's okay. I've been talking to you for a while. For any comments or any thoughts you might have around this, and again, apologies for the risk register being a previous version.
Just one comment. Oh, it's my ignorance, maybe. On the risk register, it says there's an uncontrolled column and current. What is uncontrolled?
I think that's if we left, that's a score awarded to the risk owl if we didn't have any mitigations in place. So the board and committee have decided that it's got a score of 8 if we look at admin 01, for example, but with our mitigations in place, it actually reduces it down to a 4. So it's the risk placed on this particular item if it's left unchecked.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Errol. Any more questions? Karina?
Could I go back to the idea of pooling, and what's the government's desire? Is it just to reduce administration, well, fees basically, or is there another ulterior motive?
I think the request is coming from a couple of places actually. One is it's asking, is there a better way to do things? I say it's administered over 86 funds, administration authorities. It's looking at growth in the UK, so potential investments within the UK and getting the economy kick-started using investments into the UK, potentially infrastructure, for example. It does discuss fees, but also investment performance as well. So it's looking a bit of everything, but I think the prime driving thing behind it is probably trying to look to get some investment from the LGPS or pension funds within the UK to stimulate some growth in the UK.
Is that towards their green objectives, possibly?
Potentially, I don't know. I think it's probably focused on the economy as well, actually, Greener. But it's looking at UK-based investments and whatever that may be, whether it be local impact or environmental, as you say. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, David.
Yes, thanks, Chair. On the same issue as the councillor was mentioning, really, the call for evidence and the government pension review, I don't see it coming from the environmental perspective at all. It's all from the economy, and they want more investment in the UK, and they're not really defining that as being listed equities or infrastructure or other private assets. It's just generally, I think the governments have inherited not much cash to carry out their policies in terms of government resources, and they have got their eye on LGPS cash and other pension fund assets as means of kickstarting the economy, which is a big plank of their economic policy and their ambition. So it's a bit worrying in some ways that it seems to be led largely by HM Treasury. As a former treasurer myself, it might seem a bit odd to say that, but I think if it was led by MHCLG, I would be a bit less worried. But as Chris said, they are listening at the moment. I'm just a bit worried that they may have their agenda already more or less inked in, and they've got special advisors and the like, and civil servants as well, who are looking to consolidate, which would mean potentially merging pension funds like ourselves and potentially merging some of the LGPS pools. They suggest that would mean greater investment in the UK. Most of the LGPS seem to be responding, saying it would be counterproductive, and that the size of the current Wales pool, for instance, is sufficient. And if we went to go beyond that in scale, we would be missing out on some niche local investment opportunities. So the LGPS is saying no to the, and this is general across every response I've seen, no to the sort of restructuring, which would mean some costs involved in transition, in terms of transitioning assets and transitioning and all this reorganisation. We've all seen reorganisations in the past, and they always have a cost. And you know, the LGPS is generally happy to work with the new government to increase investment in the UK from the current structure, rather than fighting on two fronts. But investing in the UK will require some form of either, but increasing that investment could be required. If it's required, then there may be a need for legislation on the fiduciary duty. If it could be incentivised, which would be our preference, and that's in our response and in WPP's response and in several others, like consultants like Hymans Robertson and the like have responded. And the government could encourage UK investment by putting some sort of backstop in place so that pension funds, if we put considerably more into things like UK infrastructure, then that we could be protected by the government to put that money in by some form of, or you'll get the minimum of your assets plus CPI. But it's very unlikely that the government have got the resources to do that. So it'll be interesting where they go, and I am a bit worried that it's HM Treasury that's holding the lead on this rather than MHCLG, where we perhaps as LGPS have more friends.
Oh, thanks very much. There's more questions raised there as per how you would incentivize investment in certain areas, but for us, but I don't know. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks, Karina. I think we have to wait and see where they're going, but I totally agree with David here. Being larger than me might be counterproductive with all the pools amalgamating. Just keep our identity, and we'll be able to invest in the niche markets locally. So that is the way forward, I think, and totally agree with David. Thank you, David. Any more questions? Okay, then, Chris, any more?
Thank you, Chair. And just one other further point, just not to labour this one, is that the LGPS is already investing in the UK as well. So if the opportunity is correct and suits with the investment objective of the funds, we're already doing it as well. So it's a lot to be discussed, and I'll keep you posted, as I mentioned. So just one more item on this report, and that's to do with the breaches register. Just to let committee know, there have been no breaches identified since the last time we met, but we have just tidied up the wording in one of the breaches just to make it more relevant for today. So no new ones identified, but just some wording tidied up in one of the breaches.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
So yes, so the purpose of the
amendments, is it?
Sorry.
Do you want to approve the amendments first, or what?
Yeah, so approve the amendments to the admin risk register is essentially the outcome of this one, please.
Yeah, can we approve amendments, and Chris will forward once it's all been changed. So can I propose a second to approve amendments, please? Any hands up? Thank you. Second, thank you, Adam. All happy? Okay, thank you very much. And this is happy to don't need a proposal, just to note this, isn't it, Chris? We don't have to propose a second.
Fine, sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, then. I just lost me. Pension Regulator Code, General Code of Practice. Chris, I presume?
It is, yes. Thank you, Chair. Again, this one is just for information for committee, so I won't spend too much time on this one. It's essentially a 6-monthly update. We're 6 months into the new General Code of Practice, and committee will be aware that we have been carrying out a review of how we sit against the new code when compared to the old Code of Practice 14 that's been in place for many, many years to the LGPS. So this is just to give committee some reassurances that I've now completed the first high-level review of the whole of the code. And the next phase is for me to revisit and put some more supporting evidence into this. Essentially, what the code does is it asks you, are you compliant with this as part of the code? And one of those might be, have you got a policy in place for overpayments, for example? You used to be able to get away with just saying, yes, we have. But there's more focus and more scrutiny and expected from the regulator now to say, okay, evidence it, please. So give me a link to that document. And if you're referencing a specific part of that document, tell me which paragraph and which bullet point it is so I can see it. And there's loads of benefits to that, really. One, the regulator can get straight to see what they need to see, but also it enables committee members, board members, or even officers, if they're carrying out the review. If I wasn't around to carry out the review, for example, that one of my colleagues could step into my shoes and know exactly what I'm talking about. And it just provides a stronger piece of evidence to compliance with the code. So we're 6 months in, we've done the initial review, and I was on a webinar last week, I think it was, and we're ahead of the curve, I think is the expression they used in terms of having conducted this review. I think some funds are still in the place of trying to do the gap analysis between where they were and where they are in the new code. So the fact we've actually completed this initial review against the new expectations is good. We're in a good place. To say there is still more work to be done, and that will continue over some months because it's quite an in-depth piece of work. But one of the outcomes is I'm able to share a high-level report with committee. So essentially what these blue hexagons in front are showing are the 5 modules within the regulator's code. underneath each of these hexagon modules, there are further modules which you have to test against, which you'll see on this next page here. So if we look at the first one, for example, the governing body hexagon on the top left, that's then broken down into 5 additional modules below that high level. And the aim really is to try and get the bar close to the right-hand side and be in the green area as opposed to the red area. So the closer we are to the right-hand side in the green means the more compliant we are with the regulator's expectations within the code. It's unlikely that we'll ever get every module across the right-hand side because some of it's just simply not applicable to the RGPS. But the aim is to keep us in the green. As long as we're in the green, we are compliant with the regulator's expectations, and we will be able to evidence why should the regulator come knocking. So this high-level report is really for committees' benefit to show that, look, we are in a good place when it comes to compliance against the code. Look at the funding and investment one and administration, similar sort of scores all across the right. Another piece of assurance for committee is that I reviewed this with the Pensions Board as well. So at the Pensions Board meeting in September, I went into a little bit more detail with the board, and one suggestion from that meeting was that we call an additional board meeting just to focus on one of these modules and work through it in some more detail. And that's a good idea, because it's not just you relying on me saying I've done it. By having another pair of eyes, and particularly the Pensions Board, work through it with me and scrutinise the process, gives committee that assurances as well that we are doing what we need to do to make sure we're compliant. So that was it really for this item, Chair. It's just to give committee the assurances that we've looked at it, we have done the first review, work is ongoing, and hopefully you can see from, as I scroll through, that from the initial review, we are in a particularly good place when it comes to expectations against the code.
Okay.
So happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Thank you, Chris.
No, just a note, Chair, that there are no essential actions. There's one comment. So I hear what Chris says, and
yeah,
it's a step forward.
That's very good. Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, then.
That was basically the view of the board as well, Chair. And the position isn't, well, we're in a reasonably good place, and you know, not untypical for an LGPS fund, really. So it's I would just add that I sympathise with Chris that the requirements from these now does mean putting shed load more work than it used to, and lots going on.
They never seem to ease, does it, Dave? Work. It seems to be more and more reports and work to do all the while.
More
Okay,
regulation, yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, then, very happy to note the report. Thank you. I don't need to propose a second. Okay, thank you. Item 8, administering authority discretions.
Yes, that's me again. Thank you, Chair. I'll just take committee through this one in a bit more detail, because this might be the first time that some of you have come across this. Essentially, what this document and set of policies is looking to do is to provide some direction in terms of what the administering authority or the fund can do against the pension regulations. So what I mean is that the pension regulations is this really long set of regulations we have to follow, but within them there are certain discretions that the administering authority, the council as administering authority, can take. An example might be if a pension is with under a certain amount, then the administering authority can choose to consolidate that payment and pay it off as one amount rather than paying a pension of £1 every month for 40 years. It can choose to consolidate it using the government actuary factors to say, okay, rather than us pay it for 40 years, we'll consolidate it to X amount and pay it off as a one-off payment. Those are the sorts of decisions that an administrative authority can do. And that is what this document is trying to set out, really. There's a long list of discretions, as you'll see as I scroll down. So I'll try and make it for the whole screen. The column on the left is referring to the regulations based on this key up here. So prefix R, prefix TP, for example. These are all the different sets of legislation that we have to abide by. And with each of these sets of legislations, there are these discretions, which is why this list is quite long, because it's referring to each of these regulations, sets of regulations above. This isn't new. This is already in place, and this has been through committee previously. Committee have approved this previously. So it was due for review, essentially. This has been reviewed. It's been considered by, it's had some legal advice and some legal opinion on it. and it's presented today really for committee just to approve, hopefully, that they're comfortable with all the discretions in there. I can't go through each one in detail because there are so many of them, but essentially what the left-hand column is trying to do is identify which regulation it comes under, what that regulation means, who is responsible for taking the decision on it, and then on the right-hand side, the approach that the fund will take. So this is an example here, for example, talking about if somebody wants to pay some additional contributions in, it has to be at least £10 a month to make it viable for the fund to be able to administer it, for example. So these sorts of things which you might not necessarily think about, but from a fund perspective, it costs us to do anything. If there's a cost attached to it, we have to just balance that really. So that's an example there about saying that if you're going to pay some additional contributions, it's got to be at least £10 a month just to make it financially viable.
Chris,
So, of
sorry.
course.
On you.
Yeah, just to go back, just to clarify, the just below where R1610 there.
Yeah.
Are we as a committee expected to request a medical? Is that what that is saying? Are we arbitrators there? How does that work? Or is it for scheme members in general, such as a town council or something like that? Or do we as a committee sit on ask for a medical for an individual?
It's this one is an interesting one actually, Hugh. So this is where somebody wants to enter into a contract to pay some additional contributions. Yeah. And the risk attached to this one is that if somebody elects to pay these contributions for a fixed period of time and then goes off on ill health in between, what happens to that contract if they're partway through it, for example? So no, to answer your question, no, we're not expecting you to sit on a medical committee and whatnot. But what this is saying is that under the expectations within the scheme of delegation that the fund has, that this sits under committee's responsibility to make sure that we have this process in place. If it falls outside of the norm, then I'd bring it to you, basically.
Right, okay. Because we've never had one.
Chances of it coming up are very unlikely. However, if it does, we can refer them back to this document saying this is what it means. I can't make a decision on this. Jane can't make a decision on this. We'll take it to committee, please. Can you make a decision on this one?
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. David?
Yes, Chair. Generally, I would support. I think there's a lot of detail on here where all of it seems quite logical where the decision should sit, and I would support it generally. There was just one which I'll tell you a bit of a story on this one. There was one which I thought we need to remain agile. If Chris could scroll to page 74, just a couple of pages previous, at the bottom there, you can see the one whether to terminate an admission agreement where a body fails to pay over sums to the fund, and it's the committee that makes that decision. I think the committee would make the final decision on that, but I think we need to be aware that up to that point, there'll be a lot of communication between the fund, and that would be Chris's role and Jane's role with the body, really. Just to give you the story I was going to tell you, in my previous role in Gwynedd, we had a couple of theatres who were admitted bodies and went into difficulties. And one of them, I won't say which one, but one of them was not paying any contributions for former staff. And if we'd have taken them, to court, they would have become insolvent. And basically the taxman would have taken everything before the pension fund had anything. So what I did in that instance was talk to the employer, their directors, and this theatre had the only worthwhile asset they had was a Steinway piano, grand piano. It was worth 25 grand, and I, rather than taking them to court, making them and getting nothing, they agreed for me to allow them to continue in the scheme, but for us to have a legal charge on the grand piano. So when the theatre eventually did go insolvent, with other creditors making them insolvent, we actually got 20 grand worth of piano, where was a Steinway. It wasn't in good condition. It would be worth more. But you know, I think we need to be agile and run as a business sometimes, rather than be too structured and saying that the committee can decide. I think that underneath that sort of committee taking the final decision, we need to be aware that officers may need to be quite agile in how they deal with employers going forward as well, and only sort of bring the thing to committee when it's the end, and at that point there's usually no decision to make anyway. The body is gone. So with that sort of context, I would support what's been presented.
Thank you, David. Trish?
Thank you. Really, I just wanted to say thank you very much for that example, David, because that's a good example, in my view, of where the pension fund is making sure that they're protecting the status of the pensioners, you know, because that's really what we should be about at the end of the day, trying to make sure that we're, you know, looking after the funds properly so that we can pay the pensions at the end of the day. So it was just very helpful to have that example, because I hadn't thought that pianos might come into the discussion today, but that was very useful. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Trish. Any more questions? Okay. Any more to add, Chris?
No, just to support David's point. I mean, it says Pensions Investment Committee under a lot of these, but that would be the last stage. It would have gone through lots of steps to get to some. If it arrived at you, as David rightly says, it's probably not much of a decision to make, because it's ultimately probably where it's already been.
Chris, it works like the planning meetings, really. Like most decisions are made by officers. It's the troublesome ones that come to the planning committee, really. Thank you.
I couldn't comment on that one, Hugh. Yeah, so hopefully this is just the framework behind some of the decisions that the admin authority, the council, takes when it comes to exercising the discretion. So it's a required document. It is in place already. It's been reviewed. Hopefully you've had the chance to go through them. As I say, I can't go through them in any more detail, really. It's over to you, hopefully for approval or any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got some good questions. Thank you very much. Okay, then I need to approve this. Can I have a proposal seconder, please? Any hands up? Anybody putting their hands up? Hugh, did you put your hand up then?
Yeah, no, happy.
Adam, Errol, thank you
Yeah.
very much. Everybody happy? Thank you, brilliant. Thank you. Item 9, WPP. Yeah, we just been to Flint. I think Chris will update you. It was a very good meeting. And those who don't understand, the Joint Governance Committee is made up of the 8 funds in Wales. The chairs from 8 funds in Wales, which Powys is one of them. So over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Chair. I hadn't intended to spend too much time on this item. Essentially, I'm just presenting the quarterly updates that the WPP give to us to disseminate out throughout Wales. So we're all singing from the same hymn sheet when it comes to what our committee knows. But I did just want to draw committee's attention to 2.6. I think committee needs to know about this one. 2.6 is essentially just to make committee aware that WPP has now announced who it's going to be using to manage the property portfolio within WPP, and the fact that it's got 3 core pillars in which it's looking to build some sub-funds. So UK focused real estate, which is similar to what we've got now with Schroders and whatnot. International real estate, so more of a global look, and also a local or a more impact property portfolio as well. So this is something that was been built for us. So essentially the opportunity for us to invest more locally, to have some more positive impacts in terms of our local area, whether that be in Wales, Powys, or even more broader across the UK. So the managers for those portfolios are Schroders for UK, who we currently use, CBRE in respect of international, and we have a relationship with CBRE already as well, and then Schroders also for the impact and local real estate. So we've got relationships with these previous these new managers as well. So it's just pointing out that this portfolio is going to be launched before long. So as the timing is right, we'll be making some investments into these when the time is right, as I say. Just interestingly as well, I talked about local. This local impact fund is looking to try and do it 50% of assets located in Wales. So to try and make a positive impact on the Welsh population as well. So So that was all I really want to draw out of this report. Everything else is presented for your information. Hopefully you've had the chance to read it, but I'm obviously happy to take any questions that you might have.
Any questions? It's very exciting. There's new real estate investment contracts that's trying to invest locally as well. So it's, yeah, I'm very positive about it, and doing 50% of it in Wales. So it's a fantastic way forward. Any questions? David?
Yeah, just support that again. I think I was still an officer and a mover and shaker in WPP when we put these 3 pillars together, and we were very keen. I think, I mean, committee members from all funds had sort of had investments in property, but they were generally in the southeast of England, in London and the likes, and we were looking for diversification, so looking for that's global, which we do with equities, but didn't used to do much with property, and also the local, and really looking forward to how that develops, and nice to have the existing managers who Powys are familiar with, and WPP are also familiar with, from Schroders on private equity, Gary on infrastructure, on other mandates. So continuing a good relationship with the managers there. I'm very pleased with those appointments by Chris and JGC.
Great. No, good. Thank you. Hugh?
Yeah, and isn't this where the UK government are trying to get to? Isn't this a good example of what you know, there's already been done with the WPP, and there's an accountability there. We can still influence what's going on in the WPP, and that's my fear with the UK suggestion is what purpose will we have as a committee, perhaps? And I won't go on to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think, well, with this conflict evidence, we want to keep the regional funds. It's the pooling that we're trying to amalgamate, but we'll see where we're going. It's happening very fast, so yeah, we'll see when the end of this. But I understand it does make sense, and we've got control, and we can pinpoint. We can go too big, and then some of the smaller investments we overlook. That's what I'm worried about. Okay, then, Chris, any more?
No, that was it from that report, Chair. So
okay, are we happy to approve this, isn't it, Chris?
Note
it. I can just look.
Yeah.
Okay, happy to note. Okay.
Happy, Chair.
Very much. Somebody shouting then? No?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to approve.
Thanks, Errol. Okay, thank you. Data quality, item 10. Chris, I presume?
It is. Sorry, committee. You're hearing a lot from me this morning, aren't you? This is, again, for information, really, just to make committee aware that every year, as a fund, we test our data against the pension regulator's expectations. They have 2 sets of data benchmarks that they ask us to test against. One is the scheme common data, and that is data for scheme members that every pension scheme must hold, name, address, those sorts of things. And also against scheme specific data, so that is data specific to the LGPS. So this report is basically to say we've done that test, and the scores are presented as follows. So for our common data, the score awarded to that was 98.5%. And I've also included the previous year's scores there, just for information, just to show a gradual improvement from 2021, when it was 97.7%, up to 98.5% in today's test, which is pleasing because our data set is also growing. So each day we take on new members become pensioners, etc. So our data is changing daily. Data set is growing, so the fact we're able to increase our score as well is pleasing for me. And as you'll see from this next table at the top of the page here, it's green across the board, the really high scores, but the only one that is orange, which would be the one that catches your eye, is to do with the address data. And that is primarily because the address data is probably in a format the report is not expecting. And what I mean by that is the address may be complete, but the postcode might be sat on address line 4 rather than the postcode field. It would fail the test, and it would come up as a score in there. So the data might be complete, just might not be in the format that the report is expecting. And I should also point out this is quite common across the LGPS, because we're relying on so much data coming across electronically from our employers. If it comes across into our system and the address is split over 3 lines rather than 5 lines, it would fail this test. But regardless of that, it's still 97.35%, so it's still pretty high. But that is the column that's bringing the score down to 98.5%, as you can see. So common data is in a good place. We also do the test against the scheme-specific data, and we still score very highly. So the data test for this one is 93.46%. Again, showing a growth from 91.87% in 2021. Gradual improvement every year, which is pleasing to see for the reasons I mentioned above. The data set is growing as well. But obviously looking at this table in the middle of the screen, or the bar charts in the middle of the screen, the one that catches your eye is the member benefits. So I just want to give a committee some assurances. That doesn't mean we're paying incorrect benefits to scheme members. I can assure you that we do our utmost to make sure that benefits are paid correctly and on time when they're due. But what it's to do with, primarily, is to do with a historic data recording process, I suppose. If I give you an example, it's probably best to try and demonstrate an example. So Powys, as an employer, has a lot of multiple employments. So let's say, for example, somebody has 3 jobs. They leave one of those jobs, but they carry on in 2. As a pension fund, we can merge that 3rd job in with one of the other 2 jobs. So they've gone from having 3 pension records into 2 pension records. Historically, the system used to require you to put in some information about a transfer, a physical transfer that never really happened because it was internal. Those views still exist, just for record-keeping purposes, not for calculating benefits or anything like that, but they are involved in this test. And the test is correctly identifying how on this screen looks a bit weird. You need to go and look at it. So behind this orange bar here, there is a whole list of data views that we need to go into and cleanse, essentially. It does not affect the members' benefits. It is literally a record-keeping exercise, but it is having an impact on the overall score, as you can see. So the next item is talking about a data improvement plan, and I've put them in order for a reason, because we're looking at the data here. We've identified an issue with the data. It's a historic issue. This doesn't happen anymore. This is all long-standing historic cases, but that's the reason why this score is being pulled down. So that was it, really, Chair. Just to let you know that these are the scores, the 93.46% and the 98.5%, I think it was. These are the 2 scores that will be going in the regulator's return that we submit every year. And I think that comes in November, December time. So over the next couple of months, we'll be submitting this data quality scoring over to the regulator for its record-keeping purposes. Happy to take any questions, Chair. That's it.
I can't see any questions? Oh, David.
Yeah, just to confirm that the board did scrutinise this, and we noted that the direction of travel was in the right direction, with those percentages becoming a bit better. It's difficult to move very quickly on some of these because of the amount of records, and historically the Altair system didn't deal very well with multiple jobs in the past. I think it deals with it a lot better now, so that we're dealing with sort of the sins of the fathers in terms of the records, rather than records which are now being kept inaccurately. It's just a matter of the system at one point didn't deal with it well, and it still comes up here.
Correct.
I think the board were reassured by the fact that Chris confirmed that anytime anybody actually retires, that the staff do look in detail again at all those member benefits details and calculate it absolutely correctly. So it's just a matter of some of the older records on file generally need revisiting, but we haven't got the resources to do that for everybody at once, and it's improving as time moves on. So we were, as a board, happy to receive the report and note the improvements, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, David. Any more questions? No. Does that conclude your report, Chris?
It does, just for noting, Chair. Yeah.
So just for note, are we happy to note this, please?
Yeah, happy, Chair.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, then. Item 11, data improvement plan.
Thank you, Chair. It's me again. This is just to revisit the data improvement plan. It's something we do every 2 years, just to see whether things have changed. And the data improvement plan is included as an appendix following this report. It has had a very light touch. In fact, I think the only thing that's been changed is a couple of grammatical changes, and to make sure the processes are still in place. However, if it was appropriate to put it after the data item we've just looked at, because we've identified there are data issues. So what this covering report just provides a bit of background as to why we do it and why we've got a data improvement plan in place. And the data improvement plan itself is, as you would have previously seen, it tries to set out how we're going to tackle the data quality issues that we have. And it's only, as I say, it's only around historic data in the main. And it's going to tell, the idea, intention behind it is to how we're going to try and where we're going to focus our attentions on those items that are have more of a higher priority, for example. So national insurance numbers, they have a high expectation because that will link into pension dashboards. So it's important that we have a national insurance number correct, because when somebody logs in and goes to interrogate their pension records, if the NI numbers don't match, it could be a partial return, generates queries, etc. So the first half of the report of the improvement plan is about how we're going to do it. But the key thing is really which ones we're going to focus on. And that's why we've created this table to say, well, look, this is important for us. And this is where we're going to prioritize our limited resource when it comes to sort of cleansing data as well, really. So here you can see that a lot of the focus is very high. It's focused on member benefits. Obviously, it comes back to the point, we're here to pay pensioners the correct amount when it's due. That's why the main priority is focused on member benefits. So it's very light touch. This isn't any different to what you've seen previously, but because it's been 2 years since we last approved it, the timing is due now. So it's just presented to committee for any questions, any further discussion around it, but for approval, hopefully, if committee are happy with the content of it. Again, I should just mention before David mentions, which you might do, is this was considered by the board at the last meeting as well, and board were pretty comfortable with the comments. We had a similar discussion there. So I'd like to thank David and colleagues on the board for let me use them as a sounding board, essentially.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Any questions?
Chair, I'm willing to agree that is a fair or to note it, what have you. But Chris, just as a query, are these records kept on different IT systems? Does it mean that a different system, because Altair is the one we're using now, isn't it? And
Correct.
Are we interrogating different systems to get this information?
No, but what we are doing, Hugh, is we're rather than a data submitter, we're a data recipient. All the data in our systems essentially comes from employers and scheme members. So the cleansing that we have is essentially checking data's in the right format, for example, and scrutinizing it from an employer's perspective. So, for example, if an employer sends over a contribution figure or a pay figure, our team are experienced enough to know at a glance, hang on, that looks wrong. That's our opportunity to be able to check it and interrogate it. And it comes back to David's point earlier on that when it comes to calculating actual payments of benefits, that's when we do a deep dive into the data to make sure it's correct. We've got all the historic lines, but it is only held on one system, which is the Altair system, but it does receive that data from various payroll systems, I guess.
So they are compatible then?
Yeah, because we use a system called iConnect, so we get 70% of our employers send us monthly data electronically. Which is really helpful because it means that when a scheme member logs into our member portal, for example, the data is only a month old rather than potentially being 12 months old last financial year, for example. And it means that we can spot on a monthly basis if anything looks wrong as well. So it comes from lots of sources. It comes in a format we need via iConnect and is then populated to Altair in the system in a format that is expected. If it came across incorrect, it would tell the employer submitting it, saying, hang on, there's something wrong. You've got nine digits in this, we're expecting 8. Can you sort that out and resend it, please?
Wow. Right. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, needs the approval. Can I have some approval? Who was that approval?
It was.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Yep. Thanks, Karina. Everybody happy? You can see a few hands up. Lovely. Thank you very much. Item 12, communication strategy statement. Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this is just due for review after 2 years. It was last considered in October 2022. And this is a requirement under regulations, so slightly different to the data improvement plan. We are required to have this under regulation 61. And it's essentially a document that explains to people how we'll communicate with them, in what format, whether it be paper, electronic, etc. It's a requirement under regulations, as I rightly say. Again, this has had a very light touch compared to the previous version, just to make sure that what we said 2 years ago is still applicable today in terms of process and whatnot, and it completely is. But one thing I would just like to make committee aware of is we talked about AI earlier on. The chair mentioned AI from one of his conferences. We've actually had some AI built into our member portal now. So when a scheme member logs into the member portal, what the system is now able to do is it's now able to dictate their annual benefit statement to them, as an example. So rather than somebody getting some numbers on screen and not really understanding it, the AI within the system creates an AI voice and takes the individuals through their statements. So that is a new form of communication which wasn't there before. So it's important that we just acknowledge that's an electronic delivery of information now, but it is using an individual's data. So that's something that's new in the portal. Something else that's new in the portal is a retirement planning module as well. So, for example, one of our scheme members can now log in and say, oh, I'd like my pension to be X or Y. They're able to use some tools within the module which helps them plan for retirement as well. So I just wanted to make committee aware that we've had some initial development, some additional developments of the member module since we last spoke. And these tools are now being used, and the feedback so far has been very, very positive. So this document is just trying to capture all that in terms of electronic delivery as well. So nothing new in there, just an opportunity for us to revisit, make sure it's all still applicable. So that was really all I wanted to add to this item, really, Chair. It's over to committee for any questions or...
Thanks, Chris. Any questions?
So just note as well, I think just point 3 there, that this did go through the board again as well before today. So David and his colleagues have had the opportunity to scrutinise.
The board's been busy.
They have.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I have a proposal to approve a proposal, please? Hands up. I'm scanning. Yeah, thank you, Hugh. Second, thanks, Adam. Are we happy? Great, thank you very much. Okay, then. So it goes to the private session. Are you happy? I have a proposal second. We go into private session, excluding the press and the public. Or Rachel, you got to switch off, haven't you?
Happy
Rachel.
to move that, Chair.
Thank you. Roll call seconder, please. Hugh, thank you. All happy? Yeah, great. So you let me know when everybody's should be here. Who should be here? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just give me a moment.